Hey guys, and welcome back to Altcoin Buzz Spotlight with me, Leah Heilpen, the show where we speak to entrepreneurs, innovators, and thought leaders in the cryptocurrency and the blockchain space. Joining me today is Kyle Chasse, the founder and CEO of Paid Network, the company that describes itself as your borderless legal toolkit for all your business needs. But given the hack that we saw back in March, we're going to chat to them and find out exactly what happened and learn a little bit more about the project. And as usual, guys, before we jump in, don't forget to hit the like button and hit subscribe so you never miss a video, and also you can let us know in the comment section below who you want us to interview next and which topics you'd like us to cover. Kyle, welcome to Altcoin Buzz. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. You guys have been on a little bit of a whirlwind in Q1 of 2021, so I want to delve into all of it. But before I do, for those that don't know, tell us about Paid Network. What complexities in the industry are you guys aiming to solve?
Yeah, I mean, Paid Network, at its core is really trying to solve a really big problem that I experienced, and I know a lot of other people experience, that are entrepreneurs or freelancers or whatever, even businesses. It's this idea of these contracts that we've been using for centuries, basically. Ever since the justice system was set up, we had attorneys drafting legal agreements between one another, and this is what we've been using. And that, keep in mind, that system was created, way like 100 years before computers were even around. So, and I think it's one of the only systems that we still use. Well, maybe not one of the only systems, but it's definitely an antiquated system, and it just doesn't work for the world today. There's too much going on. We like the world should evolve as technology is created. We can make better systems, and I always like to think myself as a systems innovator. So basically, back in 2016, a business partner basically committed fraud, and I tried to sue him, and that court case is still ongoing. The next thing is in June of this year, even though there was a pre-trial set for April. And then they extend it to June. So this is now going on almost 6 years. 5 years solid. But by the time it's settled, it'll probably be 6 years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars later. And that's in a first world kind of modern court system. But then you have a lot of other problems where we have cross-border business increasing at a rapid rate, even more so now with COVID. And people being able to work from a laptop anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And then there's other countries where the court systems are backed up 1,000 years, like India, for example, or speaking to people like Akon from Akon City, and the manager or the president John telling me about systems in Africa that you cannot trust any type of agreements for business there because the court systems are broken, or so much corruption that it's easy to kind of pay someone off. So really, there's not an efficient way for people to do business with one another in a contractual way, where if a dispute should arise, there's a quick and easy way to resolve that dispute. And so Paid Network, you can think of it a little bit as using a similar system to a dispute resolution solution that's on a centralized platform like eBay or something like that. However, we're using decentralized community arbitrators that are stakers of the platform, and using what we're calling smart agreements, which are massively simplified agreements. The ones that we use all the time. The lowest hanging fruit will be crypto first, and then venturing out to different industries over time. But things like SAFs and NDAs and partnership agreements and advisor agreements, things like that. There's no need for these things to be 35 pages long. No one ever reads them. And they're not designed to let people like yourself and myself understand what the intention is and what that legalese is. That's meant for lawyers to be able to screw you over in court by finding one little flaw in a sentence somewhere that screws you over. So we're massively simplifying the agreement process and using DeFi tools like insurance on deals. Like, let's say that you give someone a referral. And you kind of have to just trust that if you give someone a referral and that generates business, that then they're going to pay you out. But I know lots and lots of instances where people don't pay referral fees, and so that's kind of hard to again, if that happens to you, your only option is to go to court. And what happens if you refer somebody, because the person that wants to do business wants to buy a house for something, and so you refer them out to a realtor that lives in a different country than you do, or a different state or something like that. So, and then there's also escrow. So like decentralized escrow, where if I'm going to build a website for you, I might ask you to put money in escrow before I begin doing work. And that way we can, have trust that the money's there in case I do the work, that I make sure that I get paid. And that's kind of high level of what paid is. That is a fairly complex system. There's also things like reputation scoring and other things that we're building in there. And that will take time to build out. That will be done on, we are aiming to have our own blockchain using Substrate that's connected to Polkadot, either through Parachain or Parathread. And we expect that this full development will take about another 9 months. So, having been in crypto for almost a decade and realizing how important it is to stay relevant and when the market conditions are important, in our roadmap, we've always wanted to do a crowdfunding platform that had a governance model into it. So like a full decentralized crowdfunding platform that protected investors in case a project didn't execute on what they said they were going to do, to enable a way for investors to get their money back. And that is also a goal of Paid Network over time. However, right now, to get something up and going quickly, we're leveraging kind of my experience as an investor in the space since, buying Bitcoin in 2012 and then, going into different infrastructure investments in 2014 and up until today. Bringing that deal flow that we get to our paid community, and that's why we have like Paid Ignition, our launch pad, and yeah, that's a bit about paid.
I think you make a really interesting point when you say, everything in this world is developed except for this kind of area and this industry. And I totally agree with you. I also think the education sector is another sector which desperately needs to innovate and move on. But it is a long road, and you unfortunately had a hack back in March of 2021. So this year, really want to talk to you about it. So can you explain to us exactly what happened and what you guys are doing to prevent this from ever happening again, or anything similar to this happening again?
Yeah, so what happened was, we used a third-party dev shop to do our token contracts. And, to be honest, I didn't really think too much about it at the time. Being someone that has been in crypto for a long time and always taken security seriously for my personal assets, storing your seed phrase for your personal wallet, I just, I wasn't really thinking about how critical it was to do the same for, the paid wallet, basically. And what happened is I really think that, there was some malicious intent behind this dev shop. And, we've since hired investigative firms like Cypherblade and things like that. I've done full forensics reports, and there's a lot of evidence that supports that idea. But basically, I thought after the token was minted and deployed and all the vesting things were taken in place, I went through a process with that dev shop of what I thought was transferring the ownership of the contract back to myself. He walked me through the steps. I entered my wallet address. He guided me through it, and I thought that was transferring ownership of the contract address. After that happened, that was actually on a hardware wallet, so I actually figured that we were good. And then finally, when I remember, it was Friday night. It was like 1:30 in the morning, about to go to bed, and one of my teammates came knocking down my door, basically telling me what was going on, and that was just like the biggest nightmare that you could ever imagine was coming true. And then when we found out what happened, the attacker basically was able to transfer the ownership of the contract to himself, which never would have happened if I actually had possession of it. So that change of ownership that I thought happened never actually happened. And it's basically the attacker had ownership of the contract, and they were able to do whatever they wanted with it at that point because they owned the entire smart contract. And our contract is upgradable. And since we had already minted our entire token supply, and since there were no tokens in that smart contract, the attacker also had to figure out a way to be able to exploit it. And what he did was basically burn all the tokens that were in our staking pool, because it gives you the ability to do that. And he was able to remint tokens because, because the max was already set in that contract, and he was able to remint tokens and send them to his wallet and then dump them on the market. So, that all happened. It was a nightmare for a good solid week. The whole team didn't get any sleep. We retained a bunch of people to help us out: Parsec, Immunify, Cypherblade. Even everybody was helping us, and basically, a lot of lessons were learned. And most importantly, we didn't want anybody to be affected from this. We made the announcement as quick as we could. We did what we could to mitigate any type of damage. We basically took a snapshot at the time of the attack, airdrop tokens to everybody at the same wallet balances that they had, and also found a way to mitigate any type of losses for people who thought that they were buying the dip in that 4-hour window after the attack, airdrop back to them. And up until this point, everybody has been, everything has been resolved. And then as far as what we've been doing to make sure it doesn't happen again, we now have, reminted the contract. The contract's now in Gnosis multi-sig, with a very smart way to make sure that the keys to that multi-sig are spread out and that not any one person can access it. So even if one of the wallets were compromised, they couldn't access the multi-sig. We've spent a lot of money on security measures. We've, I think, retained. We have a bug bounty program through Immunify. We have some white hat hackers that have been pen testing our websites and things like that, looking for bugs. We have retained a security company called RSI on a huge retainer to implement our best practices for security, and upgraded security on all fronts. So it's, I don't want to say that we're Fort Knox at this time, but I think that we're as close to it as you probably could come when it comes down to security. So, it just wasn't really on the radar before. We didn't really think it was, going to happen. We were so busy doing everything else, and then it did happen, and realized how important it was. And up until now, I think, we've learned all those lessons and take it very, very seriously.
Yeah, I guess you can never quite underestimate the importance of security, especially in this space where you have so many high advanced hackers, attackers, whatever it is, it's quite unbelievable. And it's something that you don't actually see outside of the space. I guess this space really just attracts it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're, it's all the time. It's on every level. You've got trolls. You got, you got people that are reporting you as spam. You got people trying to take down your Twitter. It's all over the place, and it's something you see a little bit, like so-and-so was hacked and blah, blah, blah. But there's so much more than just the big hacks that happen for people trying to attack you in little ways in this industry, and it's all over the place. So you really have to learn how to, have a thick skin and just know that you're doing the best that you can to do what you're doing and put in work. But yeah, security is paramount, and we take it very seriously.
Yeah, I guess you just learn from it, don't you? But I do want to talk about Ignition, because Ignition is one of the most popular crowdfunding platforms. So when will Ignition start supporting multi-chain tokens? So we will have, our first native Binance Smart Chain launch will be on the 24th with Dot Finance. Right now, our smart contracts are in a security audit with Zokyo, and then our BEP20 and ERC20 token bridge will also be live at the same time, which then means that we will have the ability for pay token to be in the BEP20 format, and this will be cool. So projects can now, starting anytime after the 24th, can do native BSC launches on Ignition. If they have an ERC20, they can use our bridge to convert their tokens to BEP20 as well, which means they could trade on PancakeSwap or SushiSwap. And then we also have our partnership with Polkadot coming up, where a project can mint their tokens on Ignition using the smart contract, audited smart contract that Polkadot created, allowing a project to create
a certain percentage of their token supply in an ERC20 and a certain percentage in the native Rust language that is used on Polkadots, in the Polkadot ecosystem. So as far as having native Polkadot fundraises, that all comes down to when we can actually integrate with Plasm. So, but yeah, so ERC20 and BEP20 will be live this month, and ERC20 already is, but yeah, that's.
Would you ever consider dividing paid and ignition into two separate tokens?
No, because I believe that, if you look at what CZ has done, and I've been doing token economics for a long time, I feel like anybody who has a project that's done relatively well, and then they have another idea, and they create another token, there are exceptions when that would make sense. Like if there was just no logistical way, or no logical way that those two utilities could operate in the same ecosystem, then okay, maybe it makes sense to make another token. But if you can create more utility for your same token and give that benefit to the community that's holding your token already, that's ideal. And that's exactly what CZ has done. The BNB token was a joke at first, right? It was used for discount on trading fees, big deal. Yeah. And then they added more utility and more utility and more utility, and now it's now it's being used on their own chain, and then more utility and more utility, and now it's massive. And just as another example, we are actually forking Ignition and creating another launchpad called Apollo X, which is kind of the analogy is it's the Kusama version of Ignition. It's the wild cousin of Ignition, less tested, no promises type of platform. And it's going to have a different lottery model, more similar to like Trust Swap or BSC Pad with guaranteed allocations. It'll be more suitable for people with smaller paid holdings. One of the biggest complaints that we get from the community is Ignition is kind of severely benefits whales of paid token holders. Like they really benefit from the Ignition platform. And I think that that model makes a lot of sense for the demand of the paid token. People realize that if they're using Ignition and the more tokens that they hold for paid, the more tickets that they can win per IDO, which means the larger their allocation is, right? So if if each ticket that wins on Ignition is a $200, but you have a ton of tokens and you win 10 tokens that are 10 tickets, then that means you got a $2,000 allocation into a public sale. And if that does a 20x, now you just made $40,000 in a matter of hours. So it's very lucrative to be holding a lot of paid on Ignition. However, because we have so many whales, it's harder for the small guys to actually get a piece of the action. So Apollo X will be a complete opposite of that, where you will just have to be holding a small amount of paid and get guaranteed allocations. It might be it'll be spread much more thin. So maybe, if you hold a small amount, you might only get a $20 or $25 allocation. But, for guys that can't afford a lot of paid, maybe that's a big deal. It's still on a $25 allocation. If it does a 20x, that's probably good money for whoever that person is. So that's Apollo X. And why I brought it up was because, again, Apollo X, even though we could theoretically create its own native token, it will also be using paid tokens.
Okay, I was going to ask you actually about Apollo X, so that's great, that's covered. But sticking with Ignition for a minute, on May 4th, there were reports of some loading issues. So what happened there? Can you talk me through that?
So you took 2 days, so that was for the Globe IDO. Yeah, so so it was basically under extreme, I'm pretty sure that on May 4th, we conducted the largest IDO the world has ever seen. We did I think the raise was about $3 million for Globe, with each person's ticket size being $200. So imagine how many people are trying to access that website at the same time. We were able to do the Galaxy tier just fine. Galaxy tier is the guaranteed allocation, and our system operated just fine for that. even though we stress tested the ignition site for a lot of traffic, there's other things like we use something called Kubernetes, and we also use MongoDB, and all these things have to work simultaneously together. So what we had to do was we had to spin up more nodes, more clusters in order to accommodate that much traffic. And then we even had to delay it further because the nodes that we had spun up weren't whitelisted on MongoDB. So we had to figure that solution out. And then when we finally did, it went smooth after that. So, it's just, we didn't expect that much traffic, and ultimately it was a couple hour delay, and then we got it up and running. But it was a huge raise, and we did the whole $3 million in less than an hour.
So when we were preparing for this interview, we also looked at the community. We tried to get some questions from them. So one of the questions that we got from the community was, is there a 10% airdrop happening? When is it happening, if it is? And what is the criteria to be a part of this, get involved in it?
Yeah, so that was, so the 10% airdrop tokens will go out tomorrow. We took a snapshot last week.
Tomorrow being what the date, because we're going to air this isn't live, so tomorrow is, I believe, the 7th of May.
So the tokens will go out May 7th.
Okay.
And basically what the Lucky 7 bonus was when we had the attack and we did the paid V2 airdrop, we wanted to think of a way to incentivize people to hodl versus dump their tokens, because we knew that there would probably be some weak community sentiment at the time, some uncertainty, and we wanted to support people who were long and supported us. So we offered this Lucky 7 bonus saying, if you hold your tokens for 7 weeks from the airdrop and don't touch them, we will give you 10% bonus to your airdrop. So, if you had 1,000 tokens at the time of the attack, and then we airdropped you 1,000 tokens, and then you still have 7,000 tokens or 1,000 tokens as of last week. On tomorrow, the 7th, we will drop 100 tokens into that wallet and give a 10% bonus.
Another question that we had also from the community was that Mantra DAO recently started offering paid token staking. So will this affect the whitelisting process?
Yeah, that's a good question that I don't have the answer to. I just asked my team because I just saw the announcement this morning or last night that they were offering staking. I know that we had a problem with this with Launchpool and Unifarm. The thing is that we need to be able to see who owns those tokens, and a lot of these staking contracts go into like a pool, and you can't really see which wallet address is staking how many tokens. It's not like that on all staking contracts. So I don't know the answer to that. I just asked my team today to look into it, and they are looking into it. So we'll update the community because I know that's a big question that people are going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw that question more than once. So I'm sure people will be following to find out the answer to that. So just finally then, what can we expect from you guys for the rest of the year?
There's a lot going on. We have, so our goal right now is all about prioritizing, so we, like, for example, one of the things when we made the roadmap that's on the website right now, that was not taking into consideration ignition and how successful that would be. When we built it, it was built quite quickly, and there was a lot of manual work that needs to go into every IDO. And so one of the things that we did about 6 weeks ago was hired a few very senior, amazing developers, guys that have Rust experience, things for Polkadot development, things like that. But the priority was because all of these IDOs took a tremendous amount of manual time for my entire team, which distracts us from building out the paid, original paid use case. And so our priority has been and is right now to get the Ignition platform fully automated, to where it doesn't take any developer resources and it doesn't take our team manual time to do these lotteries that we're doing right now. So I think that within 2 to 4 weeks or so, well, probably about 4 weeks, we will have everything automated and running very smooth. You won't see any more hiccups in IDOs. Everything will be perfectly, coded and clean coded and working really well. And we know what, the demands are and automating everything. So once that's done, we can switch our attention back to building out the core use case. And what does that mean? That means that we will be starting our journey into substrate. That's one of our priorities right now, and building out our substrate-based blockchain at the same time, working on the core developments of the paid smart agreement technology. So we have a lot of amazing advisors on board and a lot of people that already want to use this platform as soon as it's ready. So we have and there was a lot of things too. House of DAO, we're trying to launch this year in the next couple of months, which is a crypto and blockchain village here in Thailand, where crypto entrepreneurs can come and be surrounded by like-minded individuals. This is also another use case of a paid token. So we're going to have things like staking for accommodation, so instead of having to pay for a week at House of DAO, you can just have your paid token staked, for example. So this is actually acquiring a property out here and a resort that has about 40 rooms built right now, 40 villas on a beach, and then building out about another 100 units on the same property. And so all in all, I'll have over 100 units. There's a lot of people that want to do that. We're also thinking about, if borders open up, and this whole COVID thing subsides, then we would want to do some type of tropical summit, around the end or beginning of next year, where we have a big conference out here in Thailand at House of DAO, and hopefully kick off, the world somewhat returning to a state of normalcy.
Well, that would be amazing. That would be something which I think the entire community would look forward to. But it all sounds really interesting. And we will definitely have to catch up with you once, a few months have passed and there's more to discuss here, and, more's been built, basically, and we can catch up with you. So, Kyle, I want to thank you so much. And thank you for answering all my questions. It's been a real pleasure. And we'll definitely have to speak to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Have a great day.